In fact, it has started to use the court cases which were brought against leading members of the military who were accused of plotting, for instance, against the government. Yes, no, that's good, that's good. Basically, these court cases which were brought against leading military personnel who was plotting against the government have turned into something else. I mean, it seems that they are now more about taking revenge for what the current party and their predecessors went through after the 1997 coup. So it's about settling scores, it's about settling political interests, and it's also about making sure that power can be held now. So many observers have accused the current party, the Justice and Development Party, the government, of creating its own deep state structures, of creating its own guardians, rather than kind of creating a liberal political space. And that seems to be the case. Now, where does Erdogan fit? I'm not sure whether I would join your evaluation that Erdogan was the most important or the greatest politician after Mustafa Kemal. I think you have to add Turgut Özal there as well. And Turgut Özal, of course, first of all, he has the benefit of having died relatively early. So, it's more easy to kind of turn him into like this historical figure. But he really kind of managed to draw Turkey out of this terrible years of the military coup. Although, of course, his legacy is also very ambivalent, and it might turn out to be not that different from Erdogan, in the sense that both of them actually challenged the guardians at some point, and then started to find, to arrange themselves with and find a different way. So both seem to be giving into like a non-liberal politics in the end. Erdogan is, of course, not a liberal. I mean, politically, he is not a liberal because he comes from a staunchly Islamist political tradition, which has very little liberal ideas in it. I mean, it's clearly kind of anti-Western, anti-Israel. It used to be very non-market oriented, very statist. But obviously that political movement has changed, and the Justice and Development Party has made a lot of progress, so it's much more liberal in economic terms. In economic terms, it's a liberal party, and I mean, it is globally acting, globally thinking, but in terms of, in social terms, in terms of social policy, it's very conservative, and in terms of politics, it has issues with liberal ideas. So there's the only liberal aspect really of Erdogan is its economic.
It sounds like the American Republican Party these days.
I mean, if you look at the kind of tradition of right-wing, center-right-wing political parties in Turkey, that's what they have been aspiring to ever since the 1950s or late 1940s, when America became the big example for how Turkey wanted to become. I mean, back then, you could actually win elections by saying that Turkey will become the small America, Küçük America. These days, this wouldn't kind of buy you many votes, but under Menderes, that was very successful. Now, who lost Turkey? The billion-dollar question, because there's so many assumptions in there. Like the question is there anybody who could lose it? What does it mean when you lose the country? And then also the question: who asked this question and why, and where does it come from? Is it neocons in the States and so on? But I think there is obviously a bit of a, not surprise maybe, but not too much enthusiasm about the rather self-confident reappearance of Turkey in international politics, and especially its policies with, or its relations with Israel, I think, have become a bone of contention, where Turkey really broke with a Western policy and made a rather stark stance. Having said that, ever since, I mean, if you go back to the flotilla attack and the people who were killed by the Israeli Defense Forces, you actually see that the Western consensus on Israel has become much shakier, and actually led to the loosening of the blockade of Gaza. So by Israel. So I'm not so sure whether there is a very kind of substantial disagreement there. Iran is obviously another country where there is a disagreement maybe with between Turkey and American policymakers. But again, I mean, even though relations between Turkey and Iran are good, there is a massive economic development. You know, Turkish foreign policy is actually critical. I mean, Turkey does not want Iran to have nuclear power, obviously, but you know. Every rational acting Turkish diplomat will tell you, well, you know, we have to live with Iran. You can't. It's not like in the States where you can like drop a few bombs and then you just don't look there anymore. Obviously, it's the most important country which borders on Turkey, so it's a tight balancing act, I think, between following national interest, between and balancing that with Western politics. But then, I mean, you know, with few exceptions, it's hard to speak of a Western front. You know, just look at Libya. Even within Europe, there is not a agreement over key policy objectives. And I think, I mean, Turkey's emergence is probably better to be seen in this kind of emerging world of multilateralism. You know, new actors on the block like India, you know, Pakistan, Brazil, India, China. You know, Turkey is of course a smaller country, but I think, I mean, in that respect, this is a general trend, and I don't think that Turkey is necessarily, in foreign policy terms, becoming a non-Western country. But I mean, certainly, what does change is that Turkey has become a country where religion and religious identity has become more pronounced, and Turkish identity has been redrawn. You know, before the core was, yes, you had to be Sunni and Muslim to be Turk, to be considered a full Turk, but you also had to be secular. Now, I think this kind of not liberal notion of citizenship has, I mean, it has opened up a bit, but still now the idea is that you have to be Sunni and Muslim Turk, and you also have to be religious in order to be considered fully like in the center of society. And that, of course, has some impact on how Turkey is acting in its neighborhood. But in general, I think, you know, Turkey has become a mercantile nation of sorts. There is, in Ahmet Davutoğlu's worldview, or like in his talks, there is a lot of philosophy, a lot of kind of deep thinking. And part of it is being understood as neo-Ottomanist, and there's like, you know, like chauvinist kind of ideas and so on. And, you know, we could discuss this, and then there is probably room
we are
for that.
lucky to have the translator of Davutoğlu's book into Greek. A colleague of mine, Nikos Ratopoulos.
Oh, excellent, yeah, great.
Which was in the best-selling list of
I
Greek
know.
for many weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Nikos made lots of money out of that. And we share it in our department.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe you will join us on the debate here. I mean, I was actually amazed because it's not translated into English yet. It's not available in English.
No, it is
Just now.
A couple of years ago.
The full book?
Yes.
No, as far as I know, you had like
It's a good translation or not.
you had like big parts of it and so on, but like I haven't seen like a proper book kind of translation. So I was actually quite impressed to see it in Greece. So now it's a great honor to see you there. We have to talk about this. But of course, like that is one thing. It's, you know, like his philosophy and so on. But when you look at Turkish foreign policy on the ground, it's very pragmatic often. And with a few exceptions, It's about creating new kind of economic opportunities for Turkey's emerging, for Turkey's growing industries. It's for Turkey's services, schools, like when you go to the large parts of the Balkans, Central Asia, Middle East, the best schools in town will be schools by the Fethullah Gülen movement, and the best school, international school in Sarajevo, together with the American school, is a Turkish school. I mean, in Albania you have them, like in Kosovo, they're very good, and this story is everywhere, in the whole neighborhood and beyond, actually. So what this new, more assertive Turkey means for the neighborhood, I think in general it means good news, because it means that there will be much more. I mean, Turkey is a country which has become, which is selling things now, and I mean, in that respect, I believe in free trade and in the idea that when people interact on the marketplace, they actually start to speak to each other, and I mean, I can't see anything bad about that. Of course, as I always say, especially when you write a book like this, then you can say something about the 30 years you wrote about. And the moment you have to make predictions, you're more likely to end up with wrong predictions. How it will look like after another 10 years of AKP hegemony, it is another story. At the moment, I don't see. I see that there's a great deal of opportunities for the neighborhood, and I don't think there's a reason to worry too much. I mean, I know that the language of neo-Ottomanism doesn't go down very well with non-Muslim communities, west of Turkey. And I understand why that is, and I think that's probably where those rhetoric sometimes gets in the way of this otherwise actually very pragmatic politics.
Good. So, the audience, yes.
Question to your last remark about how pragmatic the foreign policy is. Could you give us your view on why it is pragmatic to deny what actually happened with the Armenians?
I have questions as well, so that we... Yeah, that's it. Yes, Effie.
I was dreaming all my life about the history of the dispossessed in Turkey, and I just heard it. Thank you. But anyway, you mentioned the different kinds of groups dispossessed. I'm looking forward to reading the book. Are the Jews included as a special category? Because they are economically very visible. And okay, so that's one thing. The other thing, it's a more theoretical question, and it follows from your last presentation about the alternative Turkeys we can have. Can Turkey afford to be liberal?
Great question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'll keep my question very short. You mentioned the growth of the civil society in Greece up to 2005. How would you present the situation today, given that the impetus of the European Union is no longer there? What is the current?
Yes. Okay. I think 3 is a good number. Yeah?
You want to take charge?
No, I mean, okay, fine. Let's get another 10.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. I'll start with the easy questions first, and then I'll get to the Armenian genocide. The groups of dispossessed Jews. Now, I mean, one of the interesting experiences while writing this book was that actually you constantly realize that this is a big country with many people, once you start writing about every single group, you basically end up not being able to do anything because there's so many of them. I mean, the Jews are not in. I mean, they're not in. There's not a particular narrative on the Jews. I mean, in much of what they experienced, they're not that different from other non-Muslim communities. The only difference is, well, I mean, the main difference is that after the establishment of Israel, most poor Jews actually left for Israel, or actually many didn't want to leave but were induced to leave, often by Israel.